Hey, in this new devlog for my Roguelike game called Caves of Umbra, I will show you everything I worked on for the past months. My main focus here was the combat side of the game with the brand new addition of status effects. But before we get to that, I added a bit of variation to the mining section with some new blocks. And just in case you feel like you're not too interested in the current topic, feel free to skip to another one using the chapters below. First, I created a second type of stone that is just a bit harder than the regular stone. This is not only for variation in gameplay, but also in appearance. The other new block is the drill one, which in combination with the bomb block can pull off very cool chain reactions in return. The base block of the drill is also pretty special because it is indestructible. I'm still not sure whether or not I'm going to keep that feature, but we will see. The newest block in the game that I added just recently is not like the drill block, but it is a new ore. As you might have already guessed from the visuals of this new ore, it is copper. As of now, ores do not really matter in the game, but at least at the moment I'm planning to add a whole system of weaponsmithing and integrate the ores into many aspects of the game. And on top of all of that, I finally added the end of the levels, so that you can enter the broken elevator and get to the next level. I then added more of the unbreakable blocks along the bottom border of the level, so that the only option to get down is the elevator. Although I have this all set up, the smooth transition between levels with all important values saved doesn't work yet. I'll worry about this as soon as I start to create the parts that the level generation uses, but that's not my main focus at the moment. Because this was actually adding better visual effects, like for the bomb, and also the new addition of the cave slowly collapsing. This design choice is simply there because I don't want players to be able to mine every single block in the cave. Players have to make decisions and also leave some resources behind. Even though this can be frustrating, it's part of the fun. And if you wonder, there's not a game over state yet. So once we have that in place, the collapsed wall, as I like to call it, is an instant game over. I'm not really sure about that, to be honest, but let me know what your opinion on this is. The last thing I worked on in terms of the mining section of Caves of Umbra are some basic sounds for breaking the different blocks, but that is all I did here. Besides the mining section of the game, we also got the combat section. You get to that part when you hit these monster blocks, and you need to do that at some point because it restores a small part of your energy. This way the player is at least forced to fight, but as of now the combat section looks pretty bland and the gameplay doesn't feel too good. So let's change that. I began by adding some screen shake, and at first it looked like this. But as you can see, there's a lot of Z fighting going on now, so I switched the method of screen shake and now it is finally good looking. Just this alone adds so much to the game, but I won't stop here. Besides doing some changes to the post-processing and even more precise the colors of the game, I'm also adding new particles and I'm improving some of the already existing ones. And as cool as all of these effects are, there's one thing that is definitely my all-time favorite, and it is the visual effect called trails. So I added some trails to the bullets of the player and of course of the enemy as well. Besides looking really good, trails also have another effect, and this is so that the bullets get more predictable. For now that is all I did in terms of visual effects and game polish, so let's get to the weapon and ammo system, which definitely needs some work. As you can see, the current weapon UI doesn't show how much ammo per magazine you still have left. Also, the whole system of having a total ammo amount is not in place yet. At the moment, all weapons have an infinite amount of durability and shots, so here needs to be done some work. I began with the basic ammo UI, displaying the shots as bullets, and if all of these bullets turned grey, you need to reload. It is a rather simple system powered by a few for loops and variables that already exist for a very long time in my ammo script. In short terms, the for loop increases the index I every cycle, and it checks if the index is smaller or bigger than the current ammo variable. In case the index is smaller than the current ammo between reload variable, the icon is set as active because we still have at least this amount of shots. After this, I got to the total ammo system, where I store all of the ammo related numbers in the global weapon manager. This will be kept throughout the whole run, so all of the weapons and weapon related numbers are saved in between the different levels. One very important new feature is also the durability system, so that when weapons run out of ammo, they break. I designed the system the way I did because I like it when you need to experiment with many different weapons rather than just keeping one really good weapon forever. I may also add some way to repair weapons later, but for now, that is the current state of the overhauled weapon system. So now that we have that in place, let's get to the elephant in the room, status effects. For today, I have 3 different status effects planned. The slime or sticky effect, the bleed effect, and finally the poison effect. Let's begin with the slime effect, and together with this, I also need to set up the system of status effects applied to the player. The status effect system is split into 3 different parts. The player effect manager is just for storing the different status effects and if they are active or not. On top of all of that, all of the timers of the different effects run here. Other than the effect manager, the apply effect script sits on the enemy that applies the effect to the player. In here we basically just got the different functions that each apply their own effect. The third and last part of the system is spread through many different scripts like the player health manager or the movement script of the player. This part is where I code the actual effects, so that when the slime effect rule is set to true, the movement speed gets decreased. Back to the slime effect, the new enemy that can apply this effect to the player is obviously a green slime, as we all know them from a lot of different games. And as said before, the slime effect makes the attacked entity move about 50% slower. You may also have noticed that I said entity, and this is because we can also apply effects to enemies. To do this, I first need to create the same system as for the player that I showed you before, but just optimized for enemies. Also, I added the feature of immunity, so you can't apply the slime effect to the slime enemy, because it just makes more sense that way. Lastly, for the slime effect, I created a new weapon called the Slime Blaster. In case you want a more in-depth look at how I created this weapon, you can watch my latest video where I explain you the complete creation process. After all of this, I also did some tweaks to the effect, balancing out the amount of slowness, and I also added this UI in the bottom left corner. The second status effect on the list is the bleed effect, which makes the entity take around 1.5 times more damage. So for the enemy with the bleed effect, we got this knight enemy, which can also take a lot more damage than some of the already existing ones. And it has this massive blade, which I think the design fits so well for the bleed effect. To go further with the sword theme, the new weapon of the player that deals this new effect is a very nice looking sword with a little vampire design at the bottom. Last but not least, we got the poison effect, and you might think that here we just have a simple damage over time system, but I went a little further here, because the poison effect is only triggered when there's an action from the entity. For the player, there are 2 possible actions that can happen. You can either attack or you can dodge. Both of these moves count as actions, and this means that you take damage when you perform one of them. Other than the bleed or slime effect, this effect also doesn't just vanish after some time, but it only vanishes when it dealt damage a few times. So you just can't say you will not do anything for some time, but you are forced to take damage. In terms of a new enemy, I think it's only fitting to create a really disgusting rat hidden deep in the caves, and for the player weapon I made a crossbow with poisonous arrows that also fits pretty well in a jungle biome, if I add that later in development. With that said, these are the brand new status effects in the game, and of course all the other new additions. I really hope you like how the game is coming along, and I would highly appreciate it if you subscribed to the channel so you won't miss any future content about Caves of Umbra. See you in the next video, which will probably be mini devlog number 3. Cheers!